to answer any questions specifically about the funds or about the funding or the account generally.
Thank you. Are there questions for Ted from the board? Seeing none, I would entertain them. Oh, Director Wattenberg.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. If there are no further questions, I would move staff recommendation 22A.
Thank you. Director Smith.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The motion has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, the motion before us is the adoption of item 22A. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is passed.
Great. Thank you very much. Ted Kowalski, CWCB, for the record. Moving on to item 22B. As I just described, the process that lies in place pursuant to statute to request funds is that we receive a letter from the Attorney General's office, which we have done, and it's attached to the memorandum for 22B, the letter from our current Attorney General, and it's before the board. I think it's fairly clearly stated out. There is one correction that we'll make, but I think I'll defer to Karen Kwan to describe the requests generally and specify the one sort of clarification with regard to the funding. So,
Karen?
Hello again, Karen Kwan from the Attorney General's office. So I think you guys will remember from last year, the way that we do our funding request now is trying to balance accounting from our office with the way they do accounting from the CWCB agency. And so what you have is a summary table is identifying what was authorized for this current year, how we spent that or anticipate spending it through June 30th. And then basically we're saying we're going to give the rest back. And so then for the next fiscal year, we need this much, because otherwise we have this moving number that the offices don't agree on the number. So this is the way that we've laid it out. And just to clarify for some people that we end up asking for more than we spend in a fiscal year frequently, because we're anticipating what the expenses are going to be needed for the year first, different strategies of litigation, and anticipating that those litigations will develop in a certain way, and they frequently don't develop in the way that we've anticipated as of right now. But hoping that we usually have overestimated, but we're getting better at getting close to what we're doing. And as I had mentioned, we have greater asks in the Rio Grande because we have a litigation going on and the special master is actively involved right now. And we have we're trying to get our experts under contract so as to do some hydrogeological analyses, some modeling analyses, and some agricultural economist analyses in the area. So that's kind of where that bulk of funds is coming. The other big bulk is coming from the Colorado River Defense of the Colorado River subunit, and CWC, the personnel, as well as the costs and fees associated with that work. And so that's why that's a big ask. The one correction that Ted had noted to is that the table says that the funding needs for fiscal year 16 overall $960,534. What that means in general is that we're just asking for $564,000 more. We're not asking for a full 960 out of the fund, but just 564 more. The correction is that in his board memo, he has it identified as $1 million, $1,534. It's $50,000 different, and it was just a misreading of our letter. We had allotted $50,000 for preparation and dealing with wild earth guardians on the Rio Grande for the case that they had threatened to sue against Dick Wolf and Mike King, and they never followed up on that suit. So I was saying we didn't need that funds, but it was read as we added the $50,000 in. So we're not asking for $1 million, and we were near $1 million. We're actually asking for $564,000, but if you're giving it all back, what we haven't spent, and then asking for it again, that's where the $960,000 comes from. And it makes complete sense, doesn't it? I know, I'm sure. If you read the letter, you will see and what we're sending back. So we truly try to work hard and my unit to protect the state's resources and work and would not want to be spending funds in a way that you guys would not want us to be doing so. So if you have any questions on that at any time, please feel free to contact me in our office at any time.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks.
I have a comment.
Director George?
I appreciate the methodology, but I hope there is no intimation that because we're doing it right, in other words, giving back what we don't spend, spending carefully, and then giving back the rest. In any one year, it's okay to say, well, never mind, because you're not using everything anyway. This is not an account we want to shortchange, ever. So if you begin to sense from anybody that this change in approach is sending a different message, let us help you, because we haven't changed our sense of importance.
Well, and I appreciate that, because I think that's where I love to hear the feel of the board, is because I recognize, and I think the staff and Director Eklund recognize how much that litigation fund helps us really back up our positions, either in court or in negotiations, and recognizing how much you guys have been phenomenal in approving the funds we request and never had an issue. But I want to make sure we take it seriously and we respect it and we need it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Ted?
Ted Kowalski, CWCB staff. For the record, I would just clarify, we have a different accounting system than the Attorney General's does. Once we receive the letter from the Attorney General and the board approves it, it's authorized, and it continues to be authorized for that specific purpose. Nevertheless, we're happy to work with them to deal with their accounting system and our accounting system, and know that the fund, and we've requested funding this year in the construction fund bill, and we've requested funding last year in the construction fund bill, and we will continue to make sure that the fund is healthy and able to adequately address the future needs that we may see coming forward on the interstate and federal front as it relates to water law. So I appreciate your point, Director George, and we certainly are aware of it and fully support it, and appreciate your support if we need it in the future to protect the fund. With that, I'm happy to run through the staff recommendation if now's an appropriate time.
Yes, Ted, I'd like you to go through the staff recommendation and make sure that we're all square on what the figures are.
Yes. So the staff recommends that the board authorize the expenditure of $55,034 for fiscal year 16 for the Arkansas River Basin, authorize expenditures of $500,000 for fiscal year 16 for the Colorado River Basin, authorize expenditures of $85,000 for fiscal year 16 for litigation work related to the Republican River litigation, and authorize $310,500 for fiscal year 16 for litigation work related to the Rio Grande River, and $50,000 related to the potential suit from the Wild Earth. No, that's okay. And we're going to strike and $50,000 related to the potential suit from Wild Earth Guardians. And direct the CWCB director and staff to expend these funds consistent with a request by the Office of the Attorney General, and direct the CWCB director, CWCB staff, and Office of the Attorney General to comply with the annual reporting requirements as specifically provided for in Section 3760 121 2.5. So just for absolute clarifications, we're asking for the staff recommendation as provided in the memo, with the exception of the words "and $50,000 related to the potential suit from the Wild Earth Guardians."
Okay. Is there any discussion from the board? I would entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So move.
Director George, seconded by Director Wattenberg. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the motion before us is the approval of the staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to agenda 18 next.
Yes. Kylie, welcome back.
Thank you. Kaylee White, CWCB staff. Back to agenda item 18, request for authorization to proceed to trial in case number 11 CW265, application of Fort Collins. Staff requests that the board authorize us to continue towards trial and related negotiations.
Director George?
If there is no discussion, I would move the staff recommendation authorizing the team to go to trial.
Second.
Seconded by Director McLeod. Is there any questions or discussion from the board? Hearing none, the motion before us is the approval of the motion to proceed to trial. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we are back to item 21, but Ted, do you have a comment you'd like to
We
impart?
can't go back to 21 because we're waiting for a federal
Okay.
representative, but we can take one more out of order. I think is it 24, which is the native, non-native issues related to the Upper Colorado River Recovery Program. And we have Michelle Garrison of the CWCB staff who's going to take that item, as well as Tom Chart of the Fish and Wildlife Service. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle? We'll proceed with agenda item 24 and come back to the other ones that we just laid over for a little bit.
All
Michelle,
right, for the
go ahead.
record, Michelle Garrison, staff, for agenda item 24. And the first thing I'm going to do is hand out a recovery program document, and then we'll start talking. So this is a report on the non-native subcommittee work for the Upper Colorado River Recovery Program. The non-native populations in the Upper Colorado River Basin have become an item of increasing concern for the recovery program. The populations have increased and increased over time. Some of these species they feel are particularly problematic. They're both predatory and competitive for habitat and food. And there are many reasons for that population explosion. Some is the drought. Species like smallmouth bass seem to do really, really well in the Yampa River when it's really dry. And there's not a whole lot we can do about that. There are some other reasons, including illegal stocking in some reservoirs, some existing populations in some reservoirs that were meant to be fisheries, but there's been some escapement, and other reasons why these populations are increasing. There have been a lot of removal efforts. The recovery program and CPW both spend a lot of time and money and effort out on the river trying to remove some of these species. CPW has been trying to get the word out to lessen the number of illegal introductions into other reservoirs and other things, but these populations continue to increase to the point that some populations, Colorado pike minnow populations, were improving, and now there's another decline, and they believe that one of the reasons is this explosion of non-native species. So a lot more effort and discussion is occurring in the recovery program to try to get some more momentum around this non-native fish control, and looking at what's being done, what could be done differently, what can we do to stop this increase and try to get these pike minnow and other fish populations to increase again. So all the different states, wildlife agencies have been looking at what they can do to make even more of a difference than the efforts that are already occurring. And so Mike King and Bob Broscheid convened this non-native fish management work group to try to look at these issues and come up with recommendations for a solid plan for the next few years. What is CPW going to do and how are they going to do it? The meetings started in 2014. They're continuing into 2015. They thought maybe 4 meetings. It looks like they've scheduled up to 6 to try to get this work done. They're looking at a lot of different issues. One was to look really carefully at everything that's being done and whether or not it's working. They've got that finished. They're looking a lot at education and getting information out to the public on why this is a problem and what we need to do to fix it. Some of these non-native species are very, very popular sport fish. And so we need to think really hard about what's a good way to address this issue. You're not just going to be able to tell the public that we don't like these fish for this reason. You got to get rid of them. There has to be a plan. So a lot of time and effort has been spent and a lot of support for more and better information and outreach to the public and to the angling community on what the problem is and the things we might be able to do to fix it in a positive way to try to get some support. And the recovery program and their information education specialists have agreed to help CPW, and so you should see some new campaigns, some new information being put out at some of the reservoirs where this is a problem to try to help address this. Another exciting thing that has come out of this is a big investigation and discussion of incentivized harvest programs. CPW is considering, one of the things they heard from the angling community was that they didn't think it was such a good idea for CPW to just electroshock and get rid of the fish. What if the anglers could catch the fish and do something with them, for at least the ones they like to eat? There's still a problem for the ones they don't want to eat. But CPW responded with, yeah, okay, we'll consider that. And so one of the things CPW is looking into is harvest incentives. So there are a lot of different ways to do that. They're looking into programs that other states have done to try to control some nuisance species in that way. So Elkhead Reservoir and Ridgeway Reservoir are two of the places they think that's maybe a good idea. They're going to try some pilots. They had one really small pilot at Ridgeway on a weekend in April. The weather was really bad, so they couldn't tell if if the turnout was low, mostly because of the weather, possibly, or because people didn't really want to catch the fish. But Elkhead is another place where there's an existing fishery. It's been managed as a sport fishery with smallmouth bass and pike in it, and they want to run an incentive program to try to decrease that species, and then at the same time find some other species that are less competitive that the angling community would still enjoy having as a fishery in Elkhead Reservoir. So those are the things I think everybody has been able to, at least in some terms, agree upon, and CPW is moving forward in those. They're also going to get rid of any bag and possession limits on those species in the areas of concern. And they're talking about ways they can get around waste of game. If they would like people to catch and get rid of some of these fish, how are they going to get around a waste of game issue? So they're working on that. One thing we haven't been able to come to agreement with all the people on the work group is the necessity for a must-kill regulation. CPW feels pretty strongly that, one, they would like to focus their efforts on things that reduce the populations of the fish, which that may not do much of, that they don't have the manpower to actively enforce that, and they don't like regulations on the book they can't enforce, and that they don't want to send a negative message first about what they're doing and start that relationship with the angling community off with a brand new regulation, that's perhaps not the best way. Other people feel like that is the strongest message you can send. So maybe if you don't do that, you're not showing a full commitment or demonstrating to the public just how serious of an issue this is. But I think they're making some headway because it's sounding more and more like what CPW is going to do in terms of messaging and other things could come very, very close to everything except making it a regulation. I think they're willing to put a bunch of information about, we would like you to keep these fish or dispose of these fish in the booklet, the brochure, their fishing brochure, and those types of things. So I think they're making some headway there. So that's good news. In terms of CWCB support, I want to be really, really clear about a couple of things that are going on. One is that the $500,000 that we had in the Species Conservation Trust Fund for this fiscal year, we originally thought was going to be used for some work at Walton Creek confluence on the Yampa River. As it turns out, they decided the most important thing that needed to be done this year was to purchase a net to put in front of the spillway at Elkhead. Thank you. I'm going to go at Elkhead Reservoir because they have stocked sports fish in that reservoir for a long time. And they escape when there is a spill. They decided that was kind of the number one priority. We are going to put all $500,000 of our funding into that this year, and then the recovery program has agreed to pick up the rest of the cost of that net for the spillway of Elkhead Reservoir, as long as CPW continues to work on a lake management program where they figure out how to decrease the population over time of some of those sports fish and replace that with some more suitable sport fish. So CPW is continuing to work on that. For next year, we have $1 million of Species Conservation Trust Fund money that is tagged for non-native fish control. About 500,000 of that we suspect will be spent on the Walton Creek confluence area. There's some gravel pits and stuff in the area that make excellent pike habitat. So they want to restore that stream channel and make it less appealing to the pike, assuming they can get all the right permits and agreements with local landowners and stuff. And then part of the remainder of the funding will be used for this incentivized harvest program. And so one thing the CPW would like to do that we wanted the board to know about is purchase some prizes. If they do fishing derbies or some sort of fishing contest in this harvest incentives, where they may give prizes for biggest fish caught, most fish caught, smallest fish caught, that type of thing, that money would be spent to help provide the prizes for that. Or that they might do tagged fish, where they go in and catch a bunch of the species of concern and put tags in them, and certain tags would be worth certain prizes. And then every fish you catch, you would have to take in and have to have scanned to see if your fish is one of the winning fish. So we wanted the board to understand that that'll probably be occurring first at Ridgeway, the end of June. I don't have all the details about what they want to do there, but Ridgeway is going to do one, and then later at Elkhead. If these are popular, we may see them again for a couple of years and bigger if they work. But that's the biggest thing that I wanted to point out to the board in terms of what the CWCB will be doing to support these efforts. Any questions?
Director George?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michelle, that's an excellent report. You gave the message of the intricacies and the impossibilities and the impracticalities and all of what this program represents. Whoever created this brochure, kudos to them. It's really quite good. The photography in particular, if it doesn't turn your stomach, it should. But I've struggled with this program for as long as I've been in public life. And it doesn't surprise me that on the front page of this brochure, I find this statement. In the Upper Basin, despite years of significant effort, the non-native fish threat remains largely uncontrolled. And so then while I hear the effort, and it sounds good, and it sounds like CPW is doing everything it can to be creative and hope to be successful. You're good. You're showing lots more optimism than I've ever been able to engender in this subject, and I while I know we need to continue to support the effort, it's a finger in the dike scenario. You got to stay there. You got to keep the finger in, but that's all it is. And I don't know when the time comes when this board has to say, is this the right priority for $1 million? So I'm not there today, maybe because it's towards the end of the week and my birthday's coming up, and I don't know, but I feel a need to at least sound this point of view that I don't think that the general public is ever going to get where they need to be on this, because as long as fishermen will continue to stock on their own, the fish that they like to fish on their own, this is not going to succeed.
Correct. And I think CPW shares much of your sentiment that it's going to be a really long haul, and that one of the things they have to look at that they haven't finished looking at yet is can you find a species that is a little more compatible that the fishermen still like? Because if you can't, they're going to keep putting the ones they like back. So any other questions? I think Tom Chart from the Recovery Program would like to speak for a few minutes about this too.
Tom, do you have additional comments you'd like to make?
Just a couple, maybe. Director, I understand where you're coming from on this. This is a long haul for sure. I do think that, we've as a program, we've recognized this non-native fish predator issue as being the thing that really is kind of come to the fore here over the course of the last 10 to 12 years. We've kind of robbed from different parts of the program, whether that's habitat management, our hatchery program, our population estimates on the endangered fish. And this problem is bigger than the program is. So first of all, I wanted to thank State of Colorado, the board, for these contributions from the trust fund. They're incredibly important. And as time goes on, we're understanding we were trying to control these populations down in the river in critical habitat, realizing that these reservoir sources were constantly leaking in and we were digging a hole in the sand. I think the management is shifting now, and we're starting to do some of these screens up in the reservoir, some of the work that Michelle identified in terms of trying to change those fisheries up there to species that are more compatible. And these are not undesirable species: largemouth bass, crappie, yellow perch, all species that can do well in the reservoir, provide a sport fishing opportunity, but do not do well when they get into the river. That's what we're trying to do. So there's a short game trying to control the problem we have out there right now. A long game is trying to change these perceptions, which is a very long, hard battle, that's for sure. But mostly I just wanted to thank the contributions from the trust fund. I think that they're going to be put to really good use, and there's a whole strategy that we're trying to develop here, and I believe we can get there, but it's a tough battle for sure. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Tom. Are there questions for Tom? Thank you for being here. Ted?
Great, thank you. Ted Kowalski, CWCB staff record. This is an information item. I think we don't need to take action, but if you're keeping score, I think we just have to come back after lunch for items 21, 23, and 25. And then we might get you out of here early for your birthday or whatever else you have coming up on the holiday weekend. So thanks.
Did you have a 26 that was moved around?
Yes, we did have an item 26, but we moved it. It was the report out of executive session, and we did
We've
that.
already done that.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Good.
at this time, I'm told that we are ready to take a break for lunch. And Mara, we originally had an hour scheduled. I think we'll stick to that schedule.
We can come back to 21 after.
Yes, we'll come back to do item 21 after lunch at 1:30.
Can I give an instruction?
Oh,